My father screamed into the phone that I was being selfish for interrupting his Super Bowl party. I was standing in the rain in my cap and gown, holding a doctorate degree, while he was holding a glass of champagne bought with my stolen money. That was the moment I decided to become their landlord instead of their daughter. That was the moment I realized my family did not love me. They only loved what I could provide for them. Before I tell you how I evicted my own family from the house I secretly bought, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been the family scapegoat who finally fought back. I am Maya, 32 years old, and for most of my life I was simply a background character in the Maya vs. Trey show. Growing up in Atlanta, the hierarchy was clear. My brother Trey was the star athlete, the golden child, the future NFL legend who would put our name in lights. I was just Maya the bookworm, the quiet one, the backup plan. Even though I was graduating from Howard University, the mecca of Black excellence with a PhD in economics, I was still standing there alone. The ceremony had been grueling. A steady freezing drizzle had been falling over Washington, D.C. all morning, soaking through my academic regalia. But the cold outside was nothing compared to the chill in my chest. When the dean called my name, Maya Brooks, Doctor of Economics summa cum laude, I paused. I looked out into the sea of umbrellas and cheering families. I looked at the 3 empty seats in the 4th row that I had reserved months ago. I waited for a cheer, a wave, a single familiar face. But there was only silence. The kind of silence that rings in your ears louder than any noise. I walked across that stage, took my diploma, and kept walking until I reached the parking lot. I sat in my car, shivering, water dripping from my nose onto the leather dashboard. That is when my phone buzzed. It was a Facebook notification. Brenda Brooks is live. My mother. My heart jumped. Maybe they were stuck in traffic. Maybe they were planning a surprise party. I clicked the link. The screen filled with bright lights, loud hip-hop music, and the roar of a massive crowd. They were not in traffic. They were in Miami, at the Super Bowl. My mother turned the camera to selfie mode. She was wearing a glittery jersey with Trey's old high school number on it. Behind her, my father Harold was holding a bottle of Dom Perignon, shouting at the field. And there was Trey, my 28-year-old brother, grinning like he had just won the lottery. "Hello, everyone!" My mother screamed into her phone, her voice cracking with excitement. "We are live from the VIP section, baby. The Brooks family has arrived. Look at this view. Trey is going to be down on that field next year, mark my words." I felt like someone had punched me in the throat. I dialed my father's number. It rang and rang. Finally, he picked up. "What is it?" "Maya," he shouted, sounding annoyed. "We are in the middle of the pre-game show." "Dad," I whispered, my voice trembling, "it is graduation day. You said you would be here." "I reserved seats." "Oh, for heaven's sake, Maya, do not start with the drama right now," he snapped. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Trey. He has meetings with scouts. He needs to network. This is about the family's future." "My graduation is not about the family's future," I asked, tears finally spilling over hot and fast. "I am the first doctor in this family." "It is just a piece of paper, Maya," he said dismissively. "You can get the paper any time. But the Super Bowl is today. Stop being so selfish and jealous of your brother. Find your own way home. We will celebrate when we get back next week." The line went dead. I sat there in the rain for another hour staring at the phone. Selfish. Jealous. A piece of paper. I drove back to Atlanta in a daze. The drive took 10 hours, but I did not feel the time pass. I was numb. But the numbness was about to be replaced by a rage so pure it would burn the bridge between us forever. I arrived at our family home in Atlanta 2 days later. The house was dark. The mail was piling up on the porch. I unlocked the door and stepped into the stagnant air of the living room. It was a mess. Takeout boxes, dirty laundry, and beer cans were scattered everywhere. Typical. I was the one who usually cleaned, and I had been gone for a week. I walked up the stairs to my room. I needed to leave. I needed to get my emergency fund and get out of this house before they came back. I had been saving for 4 years. Every tutoring gig, every freelance data entry job, every birthday check I had hidden away. I had $20,000 in cash locked in a fireproof safe in my closet. It was my seed money, my freedom fund. I was going to use it to move to New York and start my own firm. I opened my closet door. I knelt down and pulled away the loose floorboard where I kept the safe. My heart stopped. The safe was gone. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I tore the closet apart. I checked under the bed. I checked the drawers. Nothing. Then I saw it. A piece of paper on my desk. It was a receipt for 3 VIP Super Bowl tickets, flight upgrades, and a 5-star hotel suite in Miami. Total cost, $21,000. I fell to my knees. They had found my key. They had taken everything. My 4 years of sleepless nights. My blood, sweat, and tears. They had spent it all on a weekend of partying for a brother who had not played a professional game in his life. I was still sitting on the floor when I heard the front door slam open downstairs. Laughter, drunken shouting. They were back. I stood up, I wiped my face, I walked downstairs. They were in the living room. Trey was wearing a new gold chain spinning a football on his finger. My mother was showing off a designer bag. My father was kicking off his shoes. "You stole my money," I said. My voice was quiet, deadly calm. The room went silent. They looked at me. No one looked guilty. They just looked annoyed that I was ruining their mood. "Oh, here we go," Trey said, rolling his eyes. He flopped onto the sofa. "Relax, sis." It was a loan. "A loan," I repeated. "You broke into my safe. You took $20,000. That was my life savings." "We needed the cash," Maya, my father said, walking past me to the kitchen. "The liquidity was low this month, and this trip was an investment." Trey met a scout from the Falcons. "It is going to pay off 10 times over." "You invested my money in a party," I said, my voice rising. "You skipped my graduation to spend my money on champagne." My mother sighed, dropping her new bag onto the table. "Stop being so dramatic. You are the smart one, right? You have that fancy degree now. You can make that money back in a few months. Trey needs support right now. He is fragile. He needs to feel like a winner so he can become one." I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the entitlement in Trey's smirk, the delusion in my mother's eyes, the complete lack of respect in my father's posture. They did not see me as a daughter. They saw me as a resource, a servant, an ATM machine that they could break into whenever the golden child needed a shine. "You are right," I said. "I am the smart one." I turned around and walked back up the stairs. "Where are you going?" my mother called out. "The kitchen is a mess. You need to clean this up before you go to sleep." I did not answer. I went to my room. I did not pack my clothes. I did not pack my books. I took my laptop, my passport, and the single photo of me and my grandmother, the only person who had ever loved me. I put them in my backpack. I pulled up my banking app on my phone. I saw the credit card transaction for their flights. They had used my emergency credit card too. I hit the button marked Report Lost or Stolen. Then I hit the button marked Dispute Charges. Fraud. I booked a one-way ticket to New York City, leaving at 3 in the morning. It cost me the last $300 in my checking account. I walked back downstairs. They were already watching a replay of the game, cheering and high-fiving. They did not even turn their heads as I walked to the front door. "I am leaving," I said. My father waved his hand dismissively. Yeah. Don't forget to take out the trash on your way out." I opened the door. The night air was cool. "I will," I whispered to myself. "I am taking myself out." I shut the door behind me. I did not slam it. I closed it gently with the finality of a coffin lid. As I walked down the driveway, I did not look back at the house that had been my prison. I looked forward into the dark. I had $0 in my pocket. I had no place to live. But for the first time in 32 years, I was free. And I made a promise to the universe right there on that pavement. The next time they saw me, I would not be the victim. I would be the storm that washed them all away. I stood in the center of what used to be my sanctuary. My bedroom walls, once painted a soft lavender, were barely visible behind stacks of orange Nike shoeboxes. Trey had turned my room into his personal sneaker closet. My bed, the place where I had studied for countless exams and dreamed of a better life, was covered in his dirty laundry and a half-eaten pizza box. The smell of stale pepperoni and expensive cologne hung in the air, choking me. I opened my closet door to find a suitcase. I needed my large Samsonite, the one I had bought with my first paycheck from the tutoring center. It was gone. Of course it was gone. Trey had taken it to Miami. He needed a luggage set that looked expensive to match the fake lifestyle he was projecting to those football scouts. He was down there in Miami with my luggage, wearing clothes bought with my money, drinking champagne charged to my name. I looked around the room for anything to carry my life in. My eyes landed on a roll of heavy-duty black trash bags in the corner. How fitting, I thought. They treat me like garbage, so I will leave like garbage. I snapped a bag open. The plastic sound was loud and harsh in the silent house. I did not fold my clothes. I threw them in, my jeans, my hoodies, my few professional blazers. I swept my toiletries off the dresser into the bag. I grabbed my laptop. That was it. 32 years of life reduced to a single black plastic sack slung over my shoulder. I sat on the edge of the mattress and pulled out my phone. The screen glowed in the darkness. It was 2 in the morning. I opened the airline app. Delta Airlines. One-way ticket to John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York. Departing at 3:45 a.m. The price was $400. It was the last of the money in my checking account, leaving me with exactly $0.00. I stared at the words "one way." There was no return date, no round-trip option. This was not a vacation. This was an exile. I pressed confirm. The confirmation email hit my inbox, and for a second, I felt a wave of terror. I was going to the most expensive city in the world with nothing. But then another notification popped up on my screen. It was from my credit card app. Transaction authorized. The Ritz-Carlton Key Biscayne. $5,200. My blood ran cold. Then it began to boil. $5,000. That was a deposit on an apartment. That was my freedom. They were staying at a 5-star resort while I was packing my life into a trash bag. Another notification popped up. Prime 112 Steakhouse. $850. They were eating Wagyu beef right now. My thumb hovered over the screen. For years, I had been the dutiful daughter, the one who fixed things, the one who covered for them. I kept the lights on when Dad gambled away the bill money. I paid Trey's tuition when he spent his grant money on rims for his car. I was the safety net. But tonight, the safety net was gone. I dialed the number on the back of my digital card. The phone rang 3 times before a customer service representative picked up. Her voice was warm and professional. "Thank you for calling American Express Platinum. My name is Sarah. How can I assist you tonight, Ms. Brooks?" I took a deep breath. My voice did not shake. It was steady, cold, and precise. "Hi, Sarah. I am looking at some charges on my account that I did not make. I need to report a theft." "Oh my goodness," Sarah said, her tone shifting to concern. "I am so sorry to hear that. Let us take a look. I see a charge here at the Ritz-Carlton in Miami just 10 minutes ago. Are you currently in Miami, Ms. Brooks?" "No," I said, looking around my dark, sneaker-filled room. "I am in Atlanta, Georgia. I am holding my passport and my ID right now. I have not left the state. Someone has stolen my physical card and is using it in Florida." "Okay," Sarah said. "I can see the discrepancy. This is clearly fraud. I see multiple charges here. Flights, hotel, dining. Ms. Brooks, do you want me to freeze the card immediately?" Yes, I said. Freeze it. And Sarah mark every single transaction from the last 48 hours as unauthorized fraud. Whoever has that card is criminal. I want the card declined for any further attempts. Consider it done, Sarah said. I have locked the account. The card is now a piece of plastic. The hotel will be notified within moments that the payment method is invalid. We will launch an investigation and refund the charges to your account within a few days. Is there anything else? No, thank you, Sarah. You have been very helpful. I hung up. I sat there in the silence, imagining the scene in Miami. In a few minutes, a waiter would approach their table at the steakhouse with a card reader that beeped red. Declined. Then the hotel manager would knock on their suite door. Mr. Brooks, there is a problem with the payment. You need to provide another card or vacate the premises immediately. They had no other cards. They had no cash. They were stranded in Miami at the Super Bowl with a bill they could not pay. I stood up and slung the heavy trash bag over my shoulder. I walked down the stairs, ignoring the family photos on the wall, the smiling faces of my parents holding Trey's trophies. There were no pictures of my graduation. There were no pictures of me at all. I opened the front door and stepped out into the humid Atlanta night. An Uber was waiting at the curb, its headlights cutting through the mist. I tossed my trash bag into the trunk and climbed into the back seat. Where to, the driver asked. The airport, I said. And hurry. I have a new life to catch. As the car pulled away, I rolled down the window and looked back at the house one last time. It looked small from here. A small sad box filled with small sad people. As we merged onto the highway, the lights of downtown Atlanta rose up before me. The skyscrapers glittered like diamonds against the black velvet sky. This city had chewed me up and spit me out. It had taken my money, my pride, and my love. I pressed my hand against the cold glass of the window. Enjoy the steak, Trey, I whispered to the glass. Because it is the last meal I will ever buy you. The plane took off an hour later. As the wheels left the tarmac, I felt the gravity pushing me back into my seat, but my spirit felt lighter than air. I looked down at the sprawling city of Atlanta, a grid of golden lights disappearing beneath the clouds. I was leaving as a fugitive in the night with my clothes in a garbage bag. But a cold, hard promise formed in my chest, harder than any diamond, sharper than any knife. I am not running away, I thought. I am retreating to gather my army. I will build an empire in New York. I will turn my pain into power and my tears into equity. And when I come back to this city, I will not be Maya the doormat. I will not be Maya the scapegoat. I watched the city vanish into the darkness. Next time I see you, Atlanta, I whispered, I am going to buy you. I will own the ground they walk on, the roof over their heads, and the debt in their pockets. The game is not over, family. The game has just begun. 5 years is a long time. Long enough for a cell to regenerate, long enough for a child to learn to read, and long enough for a heartbroken girl to turn into a shark. I sat in my corner office on the 45th floor of a glass tower in Lower Manhattan. The view was breathtaking. Central Park lay spread out below me like a green carpet, but I rarely looked at it. My eyes were fixed on the 3 monitors in front of me, watching numbers dance and shift in real time. The name on the frosted glass door read Nemesis Capital. It was a joke that only I understood. In Greek mythology, Nemesis was the goddess of divine retribution against those who succumbed to hubris, arrogance before the gods. My business did not sell products. We did not manufacture widgets. We bought debt, specifically distressed debt. We bought the mortgages of people who lived beyond their means, the loans of companies that were rotting from the inside out. We bought them for pennies on the dollar, and then we collected. My assistant, a sharp young man named David, walked in and placed a file on my mahogany desk. Here is the portfolio from the Georgia Regional Bank you asked for, Ms. Brooks, he said. It is a bundle of high-risk personal loans and second mortgages, mostly bad credit, high default rates. Are you sure you want to acquire this? It looks like toxic waste. I ran my hand over the leather cover of the file. I am sure, David. Toxic waste is where the money is if you know how to handle the radiation. He nodded and left. I opened the file. I did not need to look at the spreadsheets to know what was in there. I had been tracking this specific bundle of debt for 6 months. I flipped to page 12. And there they were. The names that had haunted my nightmares for half a decade. Harold Brooks, Brenda Brooks, Trey Brooks. While I was signing checks worth millions in New York, the situation in Atlanta had deteriorated into a tragic comedy. My brother Trey, the golden child, the future NFL superstar, had lasted exactly 2 seasons on a practice squad before blowing out his knee in a preseason scrimmage. There were no more scouts. There were no more cheering crowds. The only thing left of his football career was a limp and a prescription pill habit. At 28, Trey was no longer the lean, muscular athlete on the posters. He had gained 50 pounds. He spent his days on my parents' sofa rewatching his high school highlight reels, drinking beer, and talking about how the coaches had conspired against him. He was bitter, angry, and entirely dependent on my parents. But the real cancer in the family was not Trey. It was the woman he brought home, Tiffany. She was 24, blonde, and possessed a terrifying kind of cheerful malice. She was the kind of woman who would insult you with a smile so bright you would thank her for it. She met Trey at a bar where she was working as a promoter, and she latched onto him the moment she heard his last name. She thought the Brooks family was rich. She thought they were Atlanta royalty. She did not know they were drowning in debt to keep up appearances. Tiffany worked for a multi-level marketing company that sold overpriced essential oils and diet shakes. She called herself a boss babe and a CEO on social media. In reality, she was a predator who preyed on the desperate, and my parents were the perfect victims. I scrolled through my burner Instagram account looking at the photos Tiffany had posted from the Brooks family living room. There was a video from last Sunday. Tiffany was standing in the middle of the living room holding a whiteboard lecturing my parents. "You see, Harold, Brenda?" she said in the video, her voice condescendingly sweet like she was talking to toddlers. "You guys are sitting on dead equity, that old land your mother left you in Macon. It is doing nothing. It is just dirt. If you want to build generational wealth like real wealthy people do, you need to liquidate that asset and invest in my diamond tier distribution network." My father Harold sat there nodding. He looked older, tired. The arrogance was still there, but his eyes were fearful. He was terrified of being poor, and Tiffany knew it. "But that land has been in the family since 1890, my father mumbled. "My grandmother was born on that land." Tiffany laughed a tinkling, dismissive sound. "Oh, Harold, don't be so sentimental. Do you want to hold on to sentimental dirt, or do you want to drive a Mercedes like me? I am trying to help you uplift this family. I am trying to bring you into the modern age." My mother Brenda chimed in. "Listen to her, Harold. Tiffany knows business. She has thousands of followers." I watched the video, my grip tightening on my pen until my knuckles turned white. That land in Macon was the only real thing my family owned. It was where my grandmother, the only person who ever loved me, was buried. And they were about to sell it to buy boxes of herbal tea that no one wanted. A week later, the deed was done. They sold the land. They handed the money to Tiffany. And almost immediately, the facade began to crack. The social media posts became more frantic. They leased a white Range Rover they could not afford just to take pictures in it. They went to expensive brunches and put it on credit cards that were already maxed out. Tiffany posted captions like "grinding while you sleep" and levels to this while my father was secretly taking out payday loans to cover the minimum payments on the electricity bill. They were living a lie. A loud, shiny, desperate lie. Back in my office, I looked at the file on my desk. The bank that held their mortgage, their car loans, and now the second mortgage they had taken out to give more money to Tiffany, was looking to offload the debt. They were considered high-risk borrowers. They had missed 3 payments in a row. I picked up my phone and called my head of acquisitions. "Michael," I said, my voice steady, "that portfolio from Georgia. Execute the buy order." Are you sure, Maya? Michael asked. The analytics say these borrowers are underwater. We will likely have to foreclose on 70% of them. I know, I said, spinning my chair around to look at the skyline. That is the point. I do not want to negotiate with them. I want to own the paper they built their lives on. Buy it all. And then Michael, yes, boss. Put the Brooks family file on my personal desk. I want to handle that account personally. I hung up. The sun was setting over the Hudson River, turning the water into liquid gold. In Atlanta, my family was toasting with cheap champagne, thinking they had finally made it big with Tiffany's scheme. They had no idea that the shy, quiet girl they had abandoned at the airport 5 years ago was now the one holding the leash. I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Atlanta. It was time to go home. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as the CEO of Nemesis Capital. The wolf was coming to knock on the door, and this time the house was made of straw. The silence in my penthouse was not empty. It was expensive. It was the kind of silence that cost $20,000 a month in rent. It was woven into the soundproofing of the floor-to-ceiling glass walls that separated me from the chaotic noise of Manhattan. I stood by the window, swirling a glass of Pinot Noir, watching the city lights blink like a million digital eyes. It had been 5 years since I left Atlanta with a trash bag over my shoulder. 5 years of grinding. 5 years of turning off my emotions to turn on my profits. I had built a fortress around my life, impenetrable and cold. Then the phone rang. It was not my work phone. That phone never stopped ringing. This was my personal cell, the number I had changed 3 times in 5 years. Only a handful of people had it. My lawyer, my assistant, and apparently the past I had tried to bury. I looked at the screen. The name flashing there made my stomach drop, a physical sensation, like missing a step on a staircase. Mom. I stared at it. For 5 years there had been nothing. No birthday cards, no Christmas texts, no apology for the money they stole or the graduation they skipped. Silence. And now, on a Tuesday night in October, the phone was vibrating across my marble kitchen island like an angry insect. I should have let it go to voicemail. I should have blocked the number. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. It is the flaw that kills the cat, and it is the weakness that draws the victim back to the abuser. I wanted to know why. Why now? I picked up the phone and pressed it to my ear. I did not say hello. I just listened. Maya, baby, is that you? The voice was sweet, sickeningly sweet. It was the voice Brenda Brooks used when she was at church trying to impress the deacon. It was the voice she used when she wanted to borrow money from the neighbors. It was a performance. Hello, Mother, I said. My voice was dry, devoid of any warmth. Oh, praise Jesus, she cried out, and I could hear the theatrics in her tone. Harold, get over here. It is Maya. She picked up. Oh, baby girl, we have been worried sick about you. We have been praying for you every single night. Why have you been hiding from your family? I took a sip of wine to wash down the bile rising in my throat. Worried. They had not called once, not when I was sleeping on a friend's couch in Queens, not when I was eating instant noodles for dinner. What do you want, Mother? I asked, cutting through her sermon. You have gotten hard, she said, her tone dipping slightly before recovering its fake cheerfulness. We do not want anything, sugar. We just have wonderful news. It is your brother. It is Trey. What about him? I asked. Did he finally get a job? She laughed, a dismissive tinkling sound. Oh, Maya, you know Trey is an athlete. His job is his body. But no, it is better than a job. He is getting married. I stayed silent. Married? Who would marry a man with no career, a gambling addiction, and a mother who still did his laundry? Her name is Tiffany. My mother continued, gushing now. Oh, Maya, she is just precious. She is a blonde angel. She comes from a very good family. She is going to elevate us, Maya. She is going to put the Brooks name back on the map. And the wedding, Lord have mercy, the wedding. They are doing it big. How big? I asked, watching a helicopter cut across the night sky. Super Bowl big, she squealed. Literally. They are renting out a VIP suite and a section of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It is going to be a Super Bowl-themed wedding on Super Bowl Sunday. Can you imagine? It is going to be the event of the season in Atlanta. I closed my eyes. Of course. They were repeating the same cycle. The same obsession with appearances, the same reckless spending. That sounds expensive, I said. Well, quality costs money. She snapped, a hint of the real Brenda leaking through. But that is why I am calling. We want you there, Maya. We want our family whole again, Tiffany insisted. She said she could not imagine walking down the aisle without her future sister-in-law standing there. She wants me to be a bridesmaid, I asked, skeptical. Well, actually, my mother hesitated. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. You know how weddings are, sugar. Chaos. Pure chaos. Tiffany has her friends for the photos, you know, the girls who match her aesthetic. But she needs someone responsible to handle the logistics, someone to make sure the catering staff doesn't steal the liquor, someone to manage the guest list at the door. And you were always so good at organizing things, serving. The glass in my hand nearly shattered. They did not want me as a guest. They did not want me as a sister. They wanted a free wedding planner, a bouncer, a servant. They wanted me to fly back to Atlanta on my own dime to work at the wedding of the brother who robbed me for a woman I had never met, who apparently didn't think I fit her aesthetic. I am busy, Mother, I said, moving the phone away from my ear. I have a career. I cannot just drop everything to come watch Trey make a mistake. Maya, do not be jealous, she hissed. The mask was slipping fast now. Just because you are alone up there in that cold city doesn't mean you have to ruin your brother's happiness. This is his moment. Do not be selfish. Selfish. That word again. The trigger that usually made me shrink. But this time, before I could respond, the door to my home office opened. David, my head of acquisitions, walked in. He looked apologetic, tapping his watch. He was holding a thick blue folder. He walked over to the kitchen island and placed it gently in front of me, pointing to a highlighted name on the summary sheet. I looked down. The file was labeled Delinquent Mortgage Portfolio, Georgia Region B. And there, right at the top of the list, were the names. Harold Brooks, Brenda Brooks, Trey Brooks. I froze. I signaled David to wait. I read the numbers upside down. They were 3 months behind on their primary mortgage. They had a second mortgage that was in default. And there was a new massive personal loan taken out against the equity of the house labeled wedding expenses and venue deposit. My mind raced. They were paying for this stadium wedding with money they did not have, money they had borrowed from a predatory lender. And that lender had just sold their debt to me. I looked at David. He nodded slowly. He knew exactly who they were. I was not just their daughter anymore. I was not just the scapegoat. I was their bank. I was the owner of the roof over their heads. I held the deed to their entire fake existence in my hand. Maya, are you still there? My mother demanded, her voice shrill in my ear. I said, are you coming, or are you going to abandon us again? A smile spread across my face. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf that just realized the sheep gate was left open. I looked at the file. I looked at the city lights. The anger that had been burning inside me for 5 years suddenly cooled into something solid, something useful. If I refused, they would just paint me as the villain again. They would play the victim. But if I went, I would be inside the house when it collapsed. I could verify their assets. I could document their fraud. I could ensure that when I pulled the rug out, they would have nowhere to land. I am here, Mom, I said. My voice changed. I injected warmth into it. I let it crack just a little, like I was holding back tears. I am sorry. You are right. I have been selfish. I have been working so hard I forgot what really matters. Family matters. There was a pause on the other end. She was suspicious, but her ego was too big to question her victory. "That is right," she said, smugness dripping from every syllable. "Family is everything. So you will come." "I will come," I said. "And tell Trey congratulations. I want to help. I will handle whatever you need, the catering, the organization, everything. You guys just relax and enjoy the moment." "Oh, Maya, that is wonderful," she said. "I knew you would come around. We will send you the details. Try to dress nice. You know, maybe lose a few pounds before you fly down. We want the photos to look perfect." "I will do my best," I said. "See you soon." I hung up the phone and placed it gently on the counter. David was staring at me. "You are going?" he asked. I picked up the blue file and flipped it open. I ran my finger over the foreclosure clause on page 42. "Yes," I said. "Book the jet, David. And prepare the legal team. I want the foreclosure notice ready to be served on Super Bowl Sunday." "But that is the day of the wedding," David said. "Exactly," I replied, taking a long sip of wine. "They want a show at the stadium, I'm going to give them a show." I walked to the window and pressed my hand against the cool glass. I could almost see Atlanta from here. I could see them sitting in that living room laughing, thinking they had won, thinking they had roped the donkey back in to carry their load. They had no idea they had just invited the executioner to the banquet. "I am coming home, Mom," I whispered to the reflection in the glass. "And I am bringing the receipt." The automatic doors of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport slid open, and the humid air of Atlanta hit me like a physical blow. It smelled of asphalt, pine needles, and bad memories. I adjusted the strap of my canvas duffel bag. It was a cheap bag I had bought at a thrift store in Queens specifically for this trip. Inside, buried under layers of worn-out t-shirts and denim, was a laptop worth $5,000 and a secure hard drive containing the financial death warrants of everyone I was about to visit. But to the outside world, I looked exactly like what they expected me to be. A failure. I walked past the Hertz Gold aisle where a black SUV was waiting for Maya Brooks, CEO of Nemesis Capital. I ignored it. Instead, I walked to the budget rental counter at the far end of the terminal. I rented a beige 2010 Toyota Corolla with a dent in the rear bumper and a stain on the passenger seat that looked like coffee. The car smelled of stale cigarette smoke and desperation. It was perfect. I drove toward the suburbs, gripping the steering wheel. My hands were not shaking from fear. They were steady. I was not a daughter returning to her childhood home. I was an undercover operative infiltrating a hostile regime. I turned onto the familiar street. The oak trees were taller than I remembered, casting long shadows over the driveway. And there it was. The house. It looked tired. The paint was peeling around the window frames. The lawn was overgrown. But parked right in the center of the cracked driveway was a gleaming white Range Rover. It was spotless, aggressive, and completely out of place, like a diamond tiara on a corpse. I pulled my beat-up Toyota in behind the Range Rover. The engine sputtered and died with a wheeze. I took a deep breath. Showtime. I stepped out of the car. I was wearing an oversized gray hoodie that had seen better days, baggy jeans, and scuffed sneakers. I wore no makeup. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun. I looked tired. I looked poor. The front door of the house swung open. A woman stepped out. She was blonde, petite, and dressed in a pink tracksuit that probably cost more than my rental car. Her hair was perfectly curled, her makeup was heavy, and her acrylic nails were long enough to be weapons. This was Tiffany. She stood on the porch looking down at me. She squinted, her nose wrinkling as if she had smelled something rotting. "Oh my God!" she said, her voice high and piercing. "Is that you?" She did not walk down the steps to greet me. She made me walk up to her. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice low and meek. "I am Maya." Tiffany laughed. It was a sharp barking sound. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my scuffed shoes and my cheap bag. "Wow," she said. "Trey told me you were struggling in New York, but I did not realize it was this bad." Honestly, for a second, I thought a homeless person had wandered into the driveway. We have had issues with vagrants lately. You know how the property values are dropping in this neighborhood. She turned around without waiting for a response and walked back into the house. Come on in, I guess. Try not to track dirt on the rug. I just had it professionally cleaned. I followed her inside. The living room was a shrine to bad taste. The old, comfortable furniture I grew up with was gone. In its place were white leather sofas, gold-framed mirrors, and motivational posters with quotes about hustling and success. My parents and Trey were sitting at the dining table. They looked up as I entered. There were no hugs, no tears of joy. You are late, my father said, not even looking up from his plate. We already started eating. Hey, sis, Trey said. He was holding a beer, his stomach spilling over the waistband of his sweatpants. Nice car outside. What is that, a vintage model? He laughed and Tiffany joined in. I sat down at the only empty chair. It was at the far end of the table. Tiffany sat at the head of the table. My father's seat, the seat of authority. That single detail told me everything I needed to know. She owned them. So Maya, Tiffany said, spearing a piece of steak. We were just discussing the wedding logistics. It is going to be huge, very high class. We need everyone to look the part. She paused, staring at my hoodie. Are you planning to get your hair done while you are here? She asked. Because looking like that, I cannot put you in the official photos. You look like you just rolled out of a shelter. I lowered my eyes to my plate. I am sorry, I said softly. Money has been tight. New York is expensive. Tiffany smirked. She looked at Trey and winked. So what do you actually do up there? She asked. Trey said you work with computers. What is it? Are you a waitress who codes on the weekends? Or maybe you clean offices for a tech company? I felt the heat rising in my chest, but I pushed it down. I thought about the portfolio in my briefcase. I thought about the $3 million in liquid assets I had moved into my personal account that morning. I do data entry, I lied. I just type numbers into spreadsheets for online companies. It is boring, but it pays the rent. Barely. Data entry? Tiffany repeated, scoffing. So you are basically a typist. That is cute. Well, at least you can type. Maybe you can help me address the invitations later. My handwriting is too precious to waste on envelopes. She took a sip of her wine and frowned. She slammed the glass down on the table. This is warm, she announced. She looked at my mother. Brenda, why is the wine warm? My mother, the woman who used to terrify me with a single look, flinched. I am sorry, Tiffany, honey. The fridge is acting up again. Well, fix it, Tiffany snapped. She turned her eyes to me. Maya, get up and get some ice. We need ice for the wine. And get Trey another beer while you are up. The table went silent. My father looked at his plate. My mother looked at the wall. Trey just burped and held up his empty bottle. They were treating me like a servant in the house I grew up in. I looked at Tiffany. I saw the insecurity behind her heavy eyeliner. She needed to dominate me because she was terrified that I might be better than her. She needed me to be small so she could feel big. Okay, I said. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the freezer. It was packed with frost. I grabbed the ice tray. The cold burned my fingers. I cracked the tray, listening to the ice fracture. Every cube that fell into the bucket was a countdown. I walked back to the dining room. I placed the ice bucket next to Tiffany. I took Trey's empty bottle and placed a fresh one in front of him. Thanks, sis. Trey grunted. Good to have you back. We needed a gopher. Tiffany dropped ice into her wine-splashing droplets onto the table. You missed a spot, she said, pointing to the spill. Wipe it up. I grabbed a napkin. I wiped the table. You are good at cleaning, Tiffany said, smiling at the rest of the family. Maybe you missed your calling. You could make decent money as a maid in Atlanta. I could probably get you a discount on cleaning supplies from my company. I sat back down. I looked at them. They were eating steak paid for with credit cards that were maxed out. They were sitting in a house that was technically already in default. They were mocking the woman who held the axe above their necks. I picked up my fork. "That is a great idea, Tiffany," I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. "I am always looking for new opportunities. You never know when your current situation might just collapse overnight." Tiffany laughed, missing the double meaning entirely. "Exactly," she said. "You have to hustle, Maya. Look at us. We are building an empire. You should take notes." I took a bite of my food. It tasted like ash. I am taking notes, I thought. I am taking very detailed notes. And when I am done, you won't have a table to sit at. "Eat up, everyone," I said aloud. "Enjoy the meal." I watched Tiffany swirl her wine. I watched my parents fawn over her. I watched Trey gaze at her like she was a prize. The air in the room was thick with arrogance. But I knew something they didn't. I knew the forecast. And a storm was coming that would wash this entire house of cards into the gutter. The real estate agent, a woman named Sharon with a smile that looked painful, unlocked the double mahogany doors of the estate in Buckhead. We stepped into a foyer that was larger than my entire apartment in New York. A crystal chandelier hung from the 30-foot ceiling, casting prisms of light onto the polished marble floors. Tiffany spun around in the center of the room, her arms wide, looking like a child in a candy store. "This is it," she squealed, her voice echoing off the empty walls. "Oh my God, Trey, look at this staircase. Imagine me walking down these stairs in my wedding dress. It is perfect. It screams old money. It screams legacy." Trey limped over to the floor to ceiling windows that overlooked the infinity pool and the private tennis court. He whistled low and long. "Yeah," he said, nodding. "This is the vibe. This is what a star is supposed to live in. This is what I deserve after all the pain I have been through with my knee." I stood in the back, leaning against a pillar, watching my father. Harold was not looking at the chandelier or the pool. He was looking at the flyer in his hand. The price tag. $2.4 million? I saw the color drain from his face. He loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "It is beautiful, son," my father said, his voice tight. "But 2.4 million. That is a steep asking price. Even with the down payment, the monthly carry on this would be substantial." Tiffany stopped spinning. Her face hardened instantly. The bubbly bride vanished, replaced by the predator I had seen at dinner. "Harold," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "We talked about this. You said you wanted to invest in Trey's future. You said you wanted your grandchildren to grow up in a safe environment. Are you putting a price tag on your grandson's safety?" She placed a hand on her flat stomach, playing the pregnancy card she had been using for months. My mother Brenda stepped in, looking nervous. "Of course not, Tiffany, honey. Harold just means, well, the bank has been a little difficult lately with the business loans." "The bank doesn't understand vision," Tiffany snapped. She turned to Trey. "Baby, tell them. Tell them what happens if we have to live in a regular house." Trey turned away from the window. His face crumbled. He looked like a giant, overgrown toddler on the verge of a tantrum. "I cannot do it, Dad," Trey whined. "If I have to live in a normal subdivision, I might as well be dead. Everyone knows who I am. They expect me to be living large. If I show up in a Toyota like Maya, I will be a laughingstock. I swear, if I cannot have this fresh start, I don't know if I can keep going. I have been having dark thoughts, Dad. Really dark thoughts." He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with fake sobs. It was a terrible performance, but it worked perfectly on my parents. "Oh, Trey, baby, do not say that," my mother cried, rushing over to hug him. "Harold, do something. You cannot let your son suffer like this. He is fragile." My father looked trapped. He looked from his weeping son to his demanding daughter-in-law. He knew he was broke. He knew his credit score was tanking. But his pride was the only thing he had left. I will try to call the bank again," Harold stammered. "Maybe I can pull some strings." Tiffany crossed her arms. "Conventional banks take too long, Harold. We need to close on this before the wedding. That is in 3 weeks. If we don't have this house, I am calling off the wedding. I cannot marry into a family that doesn't support us." The silence that followed was suffocating. This was the ultimatum. I cleared my throat. It was a soft sound, but in the echo chamber of the foyer it sounded like a gunshot. Everyone turned to look at me. I pushed myself off the pillar and walked slowly toward the center of the room. I kept my head down, keeping my posture submissive. "I might know a way," I said quietly. Tiffany rolled her eyes. "You," she scoffed. "What do you know about million-dollar real estate? You rent a shoebox." I ignored her insult. I turned to my father. "Dad, in my data entry job. I work for a lot of private equity firms in New York. Sometimes I type up contracts for private lenders. There is this one fund. They specialize in high-asset clients who just have temporary cash flow issues." My father's ears perked up. "Private lenders. What kind of lenders?" he asked. "They are called Dominion Trust." I lied smoothly. "It is a boutique firm. They don't look at credit scores or debt-to-income ratios. They lend based on family character and future potential." Tiffany laughed. "Character? Well, we have plenty of that. But what is the catch? Interest rates must be sky high." "Actually, no," I said, looking her in the eye. "Because they want to build long-term relationships with wealthy families, they offer a low introductory rate, 3%, interest only for the first year." The room went silent. 3% was unheard of. It was free money. My father took a step forward. "Can you get us a meeting?" "I don't have that kind of pull," I said, playing the humble servant. "But my old boss owes me a favor. I can ask him to fast-track an application. He trusts me. If I vouch for you, he might send the paperwork over today." "Do it," Tiffany commanded. "Right now. Call him." I pulled out my phone and walked to the corner. I pretended to make a call. In reality, I was just texting David, my assistant, to email the PDF we had prepared 2 days ago. The document was already drafted. The trap was already set. I came back 2 minutes later. "He said yes," I whispered. "He just emailed the contract. He said if you sign it today, the funds can be wired directly to the seller by Monday." My father looked like he had just been handed a lifeline by God himself. My mother clapped her hands. Trey stopped crying instantly. "We need to print this," Tiffany said. "Sharon, does this house have a printer?" The real estate agent, sensing her commission was safe, rushed to the home office. 10 minutes later, she returned with a thick stack of warm paper, 50 pages of dense legal jargon. My father sat down at the dining room table. He put on his reading glasses and picked up a pen. "I should probably have my lawyer look at this," he muttered, flipping through the first few pages. Tiffany put a hand on his shoulder. "Harold, do we have time for lawyers? They will take weeks to review this. Someone else is going to buy this house by then. Do you want to lose this house because you were too scared to act?" My father hesitated. He looked at Trey, who was already taking selfies by the pool. He looked at Tiffany, who was smiling at him like a shark. He looked at me. "Is it safe, Maya?" he asked. I looked straight into his eyes, the eyes of the man who chose a football game over my graduation. "It is standard boilerplate, Dad," I said. "It just says they lend you the money and you pay it back." "It is a great opportunity." He nodded. He trusted me, not because he loved me, but because he thought I was too stupid to trick him. He flipped to the signature page. He signed, "Harold Brooks." Then he made my mother sign, "Brenda Brooks." Then, because the loan required a co-signer for the asset, Trey signed. I watched the pen move across the paper. It was hypnotic. What they did not read was Clause 14, Section B, the cross-default and cross-collateralization provision. I knew the clause by heart because I wrote it. It stated that this loan for the new villa was secured not just by the villa itself, but by all other real estate assets owned by the borrowers, specifically the house they were currently living in, and the cross-default clause was the kill switch. It said that if the borrower missed a single payment on any debt owed to the lender or any entity associated with the lender had the right to accelerate the entire loan and seize all collateral immediately without a court hearing. Since I was the lender for the new house, and I had also secretly bought the debt on their old house, I controlled both ends of the fuse. All I had to do was wait for them to miss one payment on anything, just one, and I could take everything. Both houses, the cars, the furniture. Done, my father said, slamming the pen down. Tiffany shrieked with joy. She popped a bottle of champagne that Sharon had brought. To the Brooks dynasty, Tiffany toasted, raising her glass. To living the life we deserve. My father drank, Trey drank, my mother drank. They poured me a glass, but I didn't drink it. I just held it, watching the bubbles rise to the surface and burst. Congratulations, I said softly. You guys really deserve this. I looked around the beautiful empty mansion. It was a magnificent cage, and they had just locked themselves inside and handed me the key. Tiffany walked over to me, flushed with victory. See, Maya, she said, poking me in the chest with a manicured finger. This is how you make moves. You sit in your little apartment typing data and we sign million-dollar deals. Maybe if you pay attention, you will learn something. I smiled at her. A genuine, terrifying smile. Oh, I am learning, Tiffany, I said. I am learning so much. I looked down at the signed contract on the table. The ink was still wet. It was the death certificate of their financial lives, and they were cheering for it. Now we just had to wait for the wedding. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and the director was ready to call action on the final tragedy. The air inside Lumiere Bridal smelled of fresh peonies and old money. It was the kind of place where they did not put price tags on the gowns, because if you had to ask, you were in the wrong zip code. I stood by the velvet rope near the entrance, holding Tiffany's purse, her water bottle, and my mother's coat. I looked less like a future sister-in-law and more like a weary personal assistant who was seriously rethinking her life choices. Tiffany was standing on a circular podium in the center of the room, surrounded by 3 attendants who were fluffing the train of a dress that looked like it weighed more than she did. It was a monstrosity of silk lace and Swarovski crystals. It was loud. It was flashy. It was exactly the kind of dress a woman wears when she wants to prove something to people she hates. She spun around, catching her reflection in the tri-fold mirror, her eyes lit up not with joy, but with the thrill of consumption. "This is it," she whispered, pressing her hands to her cheeks. "Oh my God, Brenda, look at me. I look like a princess. No, I look like a queen. This is the dress that is going to make Trey cry. This is the dress that is going to make every girl from my high school choke on their jealousy." My mother Brenda was sitting on a plush pink sofa sipping complimentary champagne. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "You are breathtaking, Tiffany," my mother said, her voice trembling. "You look just like I did 30 years ago, only better. You were born to wear this." Tiffany looked at the sales associate, a sharp-eyed woman named Elena, who had been enduring Tiffany's demands for 2 hours with the patience of a saint. "How much is it?" Tiffany asked. Elena checked the tag discreetly. "This is a custom design from Paris," Elena said softly. "It is $15,000. Alterations are extra." The room went quiet for a second. $15,000. That was more than my parents used to make in 3 months combined. I watched my mother's face. She paled slightly, her hand tightening around the champagne flute. She knew they were broke. She knew the credit cards were screaming for mercy. But Tiffany did not flinch. She just tossed her hair back. "Perfect," she said. "It is an investment. Put it on the bill. I want to wear it out of here." "Just kidding. Pack it up." 20 minutes later, we were standing at the marble counter. The dress was wrapped in layers of tissue paper and placed in a garment bag that was larger than a body bag. Elena typed on the computer. "Okay, the total with tax comes to $16,200. How would you like to pay today?" Tiffany reached into her oversized Louis Vuitton tote bag. She dug around for a moment, her brow furrowing. She pulled out a lipstick, a hairbrush, a phone, but no wallet. She laughed nervously. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. I must have left my wallet in the Range Rover. Or maybe I switched purses this morning. Baby brain, right? She turned to my mother. Brenda, do you mind getting this one? I will Venmo you as soon as we get home. Trey just transferred his bonus to our joint account, so we are liquid. My mother looked trapped. She forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. Of course, sweetie, she said. Anything for the bride. She pulled out her Chase Sapphire card. The blue plastic looked worn. She handed it to Elena with a shaky hand. Elena inserted the card. We waited. The machine hummed. Beep. Declined. The machine chirped cheerfully. My mother turned red. That is strange, she stammered. I just paid the bill yesterday. Try it again. Maybe the chip is dirty. Elena tried it again. Beep. Declined. I stood in the back, leaning against a display case of tiaras, watching the scene unfold. I knew exactly why the card was declined. I knew because my algorithms at Nemesis Capital had flagged the account as high risk 2 days ago, freezing any transaction over $500. My mother was sweating now. She dug through her purse and pulled out another card. A Discover card. Try this one, she whispered. Beep. Declined. The silence in the boutique was deafening. Other customers were starting to look over. A bride in the corner whispered to her mother. Tiffany's face went from flushed to furious in 3 seconds. Brenda. This is embarrassing, Tiffany hissed. You said you had this handled. Do you want me to leave the dress here? Do you want me to tell Trey that his mother could not even buy her daughter-in-law a wedding dress? No, no, my mother pleaded. It must be a bank error. I will call them. We do not have time for you to sit on hold with the bank, Brenda Tiffany snapped. We have a cake tasting in 30 minutes. She spun around and her eyes landed on me. Maya, she said. I looked up from the floor. Me, I asked. Yes, you, Tiffany said, marching over to me. You have a job, don't you? You have been living in New York for 5 years, hoarding all your money while we struggle down here to build a legacy. I have some savings, I said, playing the part, but that is for my rent and my student loans. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Tiffany said, grabbing my arm. It is just a dress. Consider it your wedding gift. You did not get us anything for the engagement anyway. You owe us this. You are the big sister, right? Step up. My mother looked at me with pleading eyes. Please, Maya. Just this once. We will pay you back. I promise. I looked at them. The predator and the enabler. They were squeezing the last drop of blood from the stone. If I said no, they would leave the dress blaming me for ruining the day. If I said yes, I was throwing $16,000 into a fire. But then I remembered the plan. I remembered the contract they signed yesterday. The more debt they had, the harder they would fall. And if I paid for the dress, I could hold it over their heads later. Okay, I said quietly. I will pay for it. Tiffany let out a sigh of relief, which quickly turned back into a smirk. Finally, she said, I knew you were good for something other than fetching ice. I walked up to the counter. I reached into the back pocket of my faded jeans. I pulled out my wallet. It was a cheap Velcro wallet I had bought at a dollar store. I opened it and pulled out a card. It was heavy. It was made of solid titanium. It was an American Express Centurion card. The black card. The kind of card you can only get by invitation if you spend millions of dollars a year. But you would never know it by looking at it. Because I had covered the entire front of the card with a bright pink sticker of Hello Kitty holding a strawberry. I did this in New York to avoid gold diggers at bars. It was my favorite disguise. To the naked eye, it looked like a debit card for a teenager. I handed it to Elena. Tiffany snorted. She covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Oh my God, she whispered to my mother. Look at her card. Hello, Kitty. Is she 12 years old? That is so embarrassing. My mother shook her head. Maya always did have childish taste. I hope there is enough money on there, Maya. I do not want to be humiliated twice. Elena, the sales associate, took the card. She paused. She felt the weight of the metal. She looked at the magnetic strip on the back, which was still visible. She saw the words, American Express Centurion. Her eyes widened. She looked up at me. I met her gaze. My face was blank, but my eyes were intense. I raised one finger slightly to my lips in a shushing motion. Please just run it as debit, I said, my voice flat. Elena was a professional. She blinked once, understanding immediately. She realized that the woman in the hoodie was the only person in the room who could actually buy this entire store. Of course, ma'am, Elena said, her voice dropping to a respectful whisper. She inserted the card. There was no hesitation, no beeping. Approve. The machine chimed softly. Tiffany let out a loud breath. Thank God. I was about to have a panic attack. She grabbed the garment bag from the counter before Elena could even hand it to her. Okay, let us go, Tiffany said. We are late. Maya, carry the veil box, and do not drop it. She walked out the door without saying thank you. My mother followed her, patting her shoulder. I stood there for a second. Elena handed me back my card and the receipt. Here is your card. Ms. Brooks, she said, emphasizing my name. And the receipt. Thank you, Elena, I said. She leaned in closer. Nice sticker, she whispered, a small smile playing on her lips. It keeps the pests away, I replied. I walked out of the store into the bright Atlanta sun. Tiffany was already at the curb, yelling at the valet to bring the car around. Did you see that sticker? Tiffany was saying to my mother, laughing loudly. Hello, Kitty. I bet she has $500 left in her account now. She is going to be eating ramen for the next year to pay for my dress. God, it must be sad to be her. I gripped the receipt in my hand. It wasn't just a receipt. It was another nail in the coffin. Yes, Tiffany, I thought as I walked toward them, playing the dutiful servant. It is very sad to be me, but it is going to be tragic to be you. I climbed into the back seat of the car next to the dress that cost more than my brother made in a year. So where to next? I asked. Drive, Maya, Tiffany said, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. Just drive. We have a wedding to execute. You have no idea, I whispered to myself as I turned the key. No idea at all. The gold room at the top of the Sovereign building was the kind of place that smelled like expensive cologne and bad decisions. It was the most exclusive VIP lounge in Atlanta, the type of spot where rappers dropped $50,000 on bottle service just to watch the sparkles fizzle out, and where Instagram models fought tooth and nail to get past the velvet rope. The walls were lined with gold leaf, the seats were crushed velvet, and the view of the city skyline was worth a mortgage payment. Tonight, the entire top floor belonged to Tiffany. I had told her that I found a Groupon for a bachelorette package that included a private section and 2 bottles of vodka. Tiffany had rolled her eyes at the word Groupon, but she accepted it because she was cheap. In reality, I had wired $25,000 to the club owner, an old business associate of mine from my hedge fund days, to rent out the entire floor and stock the bar with Don Julio, 1942, and Ace of Spades champagne. I wanted her comfortable. I wanted her loose. I wanted her to feel like she owned the world, because that is when people make mistakes. But Tiffany did not know that. To her, I was just the broke, desperate sister-in-law who had scavenged a discount coupon to buy her way back into the family. Maya, stay by the curtain, Tiffany had ordered me when we arrived. Her voice already slurring slightly from the pre-game shots we took in the limo. We do not want any random people crashing our vibe. Just stand there and look intimidating, or just look like yourself. That dreary New York depression look should scare people away. Her bridesmaids, a gaggle of girls, who looked like carbon copies of her with their blonde extensions and spray tans, had erupted in laughter. So there I stood, the bouncer, the help. I leaned against the wall outside the heavy velvet curtains that separated the VIP section from the rest of the club. I was not inside enjoying the party I had paid for. I was not wearing a sash or holding a glass of champagne. I was standing guard, ensuring that the future Mrs. Brooks could party undisturbed. I was wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans, blending into the shadows like a piece of furniture. On my face, I wore a pair of thick-framed Ray-Ban Wayfarer sunglasses. "Why are you wearing sunglasses inside?" a passing waiter asked me, looking at me with confusion as he balanced a tray of shots. "It is dark in here." I adjusted the frames on the bridge of my nose. "I have a migraine," I lied smoothly. "The strobe lights trigger it." He shrugged and walked away, losing interest immediately. He did not know that these were not ordinary sunglasses. They were the new Ray-Ban Metas, equipped with a 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera and a 5-microphone array hidden in the frames. They were recording everything I saw and heard in high-definition 4K resolution. And right now, they were in standby mode, waiting for the moment to strike. Inside the VIP section, I could hear them. The music was deafening, a heavy bass trap beat that rattled my teeth. I could hear Tiffany screaming the lyrics to a song about money and power completely off-key. I could hear the pop of corks and the clinking of glass. I could hear them toasting to the Brooks dynasty and to the stupid family that was footing the bill. I checked my watch. It was 1 in the morning. The alcohol would be hitting its peak right about now. Tiffany was a lightweight, and she had been drinking tequila on an empty stomach because she was obsessing over fitting into her dress. Suddenly, the curtain rippled. Tiffany stumbled out. She was holding a half-empty bottle of tequila in one hand and her phone in the other. Her sash was crooked, and her eyes were unfocused. She looked wild, reckless. She bumped into the wall and let out a groan. One of her bridesmaids tried to follow her out, but Tiffany pushed the girl away aggressively. "Get off me!" Tiffany yelled, her voice cutting through the thumping music. "I need air. It is too hot in here. And you guys are boring me. Stop following me like lost puppies." She looked around the room, her eyes darting back and forth. She needed a quiet place, a place to make a call. I knew the signs. I had watched her check her phone every 5 minutes all night, shielding the screen with her body whenever anyone got close. She was not texting Trey. Trey was passed out at his bachelor party by now. She stumbled toward the private balcony door at the far end of the corridor. It was a secluded spot that overlooked the highway, usually reserved for staff or smoking. I waited for 10 seconds, counting them down in my head. Then I grabbed a bottle of water from a nearby service tray to use as a prop. I slipped away from my post and walked down the corridor. The bridesmaids were too busy taking selfies in the photo booth to notice the bouncer leaving. I moved like a ghost. I reached the balcony door just as it clicked shut behind Tiffany. I opened it a crack, just an inch, enough to see, enough to hear. Tiffany was leaning against the iron railing, the wind whipping her blonde hair around her face. She was holding her phone up, FaceTiming someone. The screen illuminated her face in a ghostly blue light, making her look pale and sinister. I reached up and tapped the side of my glasses. A tiny invisible LED light blinked once inside the frame. Recording started. Tiffany's voice changed instantly. The drunken slur evaporated, replaced by a low, intimate coo that made my skin crawl. "Hey, baby," she said to the screen. "God, I miss you." I focused my gaze on her phone screen. The camera in my glasses zoomed in digitally. The image was clear. It was a man. He was white, older, with silver hair and a deep tan. He was wearing a polo shirt and sitting in what looked like a home office. He was definitely not my brother Trey. "Where are you, Tiff?" the man asked. "It sounds loud. I am at the stupid bachelorette party." Tiffany groaned, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they would get stuck. "It is unbearable. I am surrounded by these idiots. And Trey's sister is here. She is such a loser. She is literally standing guard outside like a dog." The man on the screen laughed. It was a cruel, dry sound. "Just endure it a little longer, babe. Stick to the plan. We are at the finish line." I know," Tiffany said, taking a massive swig from the tequila bottle. "I am trying. But God, Chad, it is so hard. Trey is disgusting. He is getting so fat and he is so needy. Every time he touches me, I want to throw up. He thinks he is some kind of king, but he is just a broke, washed-up athlete with a family of morons." My breath caught in my throat. I stood frozen in the shadows, my heart pounding against my ribs like a hammer. I knew she was bad. I knew she was a gold digger. But hearing it out loud, hearing the visceral disgust in her voice was different. It was violent. "Just get the house," Chad said. "Did they sign the papers?" "Yes." Tiffany grinned a wicked, sharp smile that showed all her teeth. "They signed everything. The idiots didn't even read it. We close on the mansion next week. Once the deed is recorded and my name is on the title, we are safe." "And the divorce?" Chad asked. Tiffany laughed. "Give me a year. I have to play the grieving wife for a bit when his career officially dies. I will squeeze a baby out of him to lock down the child support stay for 12 months to avoid the annulment clause, and then I am taking half the house and filing for divorce. I will claim emotional distress. I will say his family was abusive. Who are they going to believe? The poor white girl, or the angry black family?" I felt a cold rage spread through my veins, colder than the liquid nitrogen in the cocktails inside. She was not just using Trey. She was planning to destroy him. She was going to weaponize racial stereotypes to paint us as monsters while she robbed us blind. She was going to use the very system I had mastered against my own flesh and blood. "You are wicked," Chad said, clearly turned on by her cruelty. "I learned from the best," Tiffany replied. "I cannot wait to be back in your bed, Chad. This whole acting black thing is exhausting. I am tired of pretending to like their food and their music. It is all so cheap. I am recording this," I thought. "I am recording every single pixel of this hate. Every syllable is a lawsuit. Every laugh is a nail in her coffin." Tiffany blew a kiss to the screen. "I have to go back inside before they send the sister to look for me. I love you. I love you too. Get that bag, baby." She hung up. I tapped the side of my glasses again. Saved. Uploading to cloud. I stepped back from the door just as Tiffany turned around. I grabbed the door handle and pulled it open, acting like I was just coming out to check on her. We bumped into each other in the doorway. "Oh," I said, feigning surprise. "I brought you some water. I thought you might be dehydrated." Tiffany jumped. She looked at me with wide, panicked eyes. For a second she looked terrified. Had I heard? Had I seen? But then she looked at my face, my blank, stupid expression, my cheap sunglasses, my slumped shoulders. She saw what she wanted to see. The help. She relaxed. She snatched the water bottle from my hand. "You nearly gave me a heart attack, you creep," she snapped. "Why are you sneaking around?" "I was just bringing water," I repeated, keeping my voice dull. Whatever she said, opening the bottle and taking a sip. "Go back to the door. And do not tell anyone I was out here. I was meditating, dealing with pre-wedding jitters." "Meditating," I said. "Right. You looked very peaceful." She narrowed her eyes at me, trying to detect sarcasm. But I gave her nothing. I was a mirror reflecting only her own vanity. "Move," she said, pushing past me. I watched her walk back into the club. She instantly transformed. She threw her arms up, screamed woo, and started dancing with her friends again. The grieving wife, the victim, the angel. I stood on the balcony for a moment longer. I looked out at the Atlanta skyline. Somewhere out there, Trey was sleeping, dreaming of his beautiful bride and his new mansion. He had no idea that the woman he loved called him disgusting. He had no idea she was planning to ruin his life. But she made one mistake. She thought I was the doormat. She didn't know that the doormat was wearing the wire. I touched the frame of my glasses one last time to confirm the upload. The video was secure. It was safe in my encrypted server in Zurich. I walked back inside the club. The bass hit me again. "Dance while you can, Tiffany," I thought, watching her grind against a stranger. "Because when the music stops, you are going to be the only one left without a chair." I resumed my post by the curtain. I crossed my arms. I adjusted my sunglasses. And for the first time in 5 years, I smiled. A real smile. It was the smile of a hunter who just watched the prey walk directly into the cage. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium was cavernous. Even empty, it felt like a living, breathing beast of concrete and steel. The air conditioning was humming at a low frequency that vibrated in my chest. We were in one of the ultra-exclusive owner suites overlooking the 50-yard line. It was a space usually reserved for billionaires and music moguls, but for the next 24 hours, it was the staging ground for the most fraudulent wedding in Atlanta history. I was carrying a crate of heavy glass vases. My arms were burning. I had been hauling decorations back and forth from the loading dock for 3 hours because Tiffany refused to pay the union surcharge for the stadium staff to do it. Maya. Hurry up! Tiffany screamed from the center of the room. She was standing by the buffet tables holding a clipboard like a weapon. We have the floral inspection in 2 minutes. If these centerpieces are not perfect, heads are going to roll. I set the crate down on the plush carpet. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with the sleeve of my oversized hoodie. I pulled out one of the vases. It was filled with white hydrangeas and roses. To me it looked elegant, expensive. Tiffany marched over. She squinted at the flowers. She leaned in close, sniffing them suspiciously. Then she recoiled as if the flowers had bitten her. "What is this?" she whispered. Her voice was low, dangerous. I looked at the flowers. "It is the arrangement you ordered, Tiffany. Hydrangeas and roses." "No!" she shrieked. Her voice echoed off the glass walls of the suite. "I ordered pastel ivory. This is cream. This is clearly cream. Are you colorblind?" She grabbed the vase. I thought she was going to inspect it closer. Instead, she swung her arm back and hurled the heavy glass vase directly at me. It happened in slow motion. I turned my shoulder just in time. The vase smashed against my collarbone, shattering instantly. Cold water soaked through my hoodie. Shards of glass scattered across the floor. The flowers lay decapitated at my feet. A sharp pain radiated through my shoulder, but I did not cry out. I stood there dripping wet, staring at her. My father Harold and my brother Trey looked up from the leather couches where they were watching a pre-game analysis on the massive TV. They did not rush to see if I was hurt. They did not ask if I was bleeding. Tiffany was breathing hard, her face flushed red. "Look what you made me do!" she yelled, pointing a manicured finger at my wet face. "You ruined my vision." I specifically said ivory because cream clashes with the napkins. Now I have to look at this garbage on my wedding day. I looked at Trey, my brother, the boy I had protected from bullies in elementary school, the boy whose homework I used to do. "Trey," I said, my voice quiet. "She just threw a glass vase at me." Trey sighed. He didn't look angry at her. He looked annoyed at me. "Come on, Maya," he said, popping a handful of peanuts into his mouth. "Do not be dramatic. You know Tiffany is under a lot of pressure. She is pregnant. Her hormones are all over the place. She is carrying my son, the future heir of this family. You need to be more understanding." "Pregnant," I repeated. "Yes, pregnant," Tiffany snapped, smoothing down her dress over her completely flat stomach. "The doctor said I need zero stress. And you standing there looking like a drowned rat is stressing me out. Clean this mess up. Now. Before the glass cuts my feet." I looked down at the shattered glass. I felt a piece of it digging into my shoe. The urge to scream, to grab her by her extensions and drag her out of the suite was overwhelming. But I swallowed it. I swallowed it like I had swallowed every insult for the last 5 years. I knelt down. I began picking up the sharp shards of glass with my bare hands. My father Harold stood up and walked over. I thought for a fleeting second that he was going to tell me to stop, that he was going to show a shred of paternal instinct. He looked down at me scrubbing the carpet. Then he looked at Tiffany, who was now checking her makeup in a compact mirror. "Tiffany is right about one thing," Harold said, clearing his throat. I looked up at him. "The image," he said. "We have senators coming tomorrow. We have scouts from the league. We have investors." He paused, looking at my wet, cheap clothes. "Maya, I have been thinking." Tomorrow during the reception, I do not think it is a good idea for you to sit at the family table. I stopped picking up the glass. What do you mean, Dad? I mean, look at you, he said, gesturing vaguely at my existence. You do not fit. We are trying to project a certain image of success, of wealth. And you have that struggling artist look. It is going to distract people. It is going to raise questions. So what do you want me to do? I asked. Stay in the hotel. No, Harold said quickly. We still need you to work. But I spoke to the event coordinator. They need someone to man the ticket scanner at the South Gate entrance. It is a staff position. You have to wear a uniform. A vest. You want me to be the ticket taker at my brother's wedding? I asked. My voice was flat. It is an important job, Harold insisted, avoiding my eyes. You will be the first face people see. You can direct them to the VIP elevators. Just keep your head down. Do not tell anyone you are related to us. Just let them think you are hired help. It is cleaner that way. Trey laughed from the couch. Yeah, plus you get a free meal ticket for the staff cafeteria. Better than the ramen you eat in New York, right? Tiffany smirked, looking down at me from her pedestal of delusion. It is for the best, Maya, she said. You would just feel uncomfortable sitting with our friends anyway. They talk about investments and travel. You would not have anything to contribute. This way you can be useful. I looked at the three of them, the father who sold me out, the brother who stole from me, the sister-in-law who assaulted me. They were not just cruel, they were dismissive. They thought I was so small, so insignificant, that they could erase me from their picture while still using my labor. I stood up. I held the broken glass in my hands. The water dripped from my clothes onto the expensive carpet. I looked up toward the ceiling of the stadium. High above us, nestled in the rafters, was the technical control room. A glass booth filled with monitor soundboards and the master controls for the massive halo board screen that circled the stadium. It was the brain of the building, the place where the magic happened. And thanks to the contract I had signed as the event organizer, I had the only all-access keycard to that room. I looked back at my father. Okay, Dad, I said. He blinked, surprised by my surrender. Okay. Yes, I said. You are right. I do not belong at the table. I should not be seen. I should be somewhere where I can oversee everything. Somewhere where I can make sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve. Harold smiled, relieved. Good girl. I knew you would understand. It is for the family. For the family, I repeated. I dropped the handful of broken glass into the trash can. It made a loud final crash. I will wear the uniform, I said. I will stand where I belong. Good, Tiffany said, turning her back to me. Now go get another vase. And check the color this time. I walked out of the suite. As the heavy door clicked shut behind me, the submissive expression fell from my face like a mask. I walked down the long, empty concrete hallway of the stadium. I walked past the south gate where they wanted me to stand. I kept walking. I walked to the service elevator at the far end of the hall. I pressed the button for the penthouse level. I pulled the key card from my pocket. It wasn't a ticket taker's badge. It was the master override key. I am not going to stand at the gate, I whispered to the empty elevator. I am going to be in the sky. I looked at the camera in the corner of the elevator and winked. Tomorrow you want me to be invisible. Fine, I will be invisible. I will be the voice of God coming out of the speakers. I will be the judgment flashing on the screens. You want to hide me in the dark. You forgot that the dark is where the monster lives. The elevator dinged. I stepped out. Let the rehearsals end, I thought. The real show begins tomorrow, and I promise you nobody is going to be looking at the flowers. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, but no one in the Brooks household was sleeping. The air in the living room was thick enough to choke on. It smelled of stale pizza, nervous sweat, and Tiffany's overpowering perfume. We were hours away from the Super Bowl wedding, the event that was supposed to crown my family as Atlanta royalty. But instead of resting or sharing happy memories, we were in the middle of a hostage situation. I sat in the far corner of the room, squeezed into a small armchair that had seen better days. My laptop was open on my knees. To them, I was the dutiful invisible sister frantically typing up last-minute guest lists and seating charts. The rhythmic clack, clack, clack of my keyboard was the background noise to their destruction. Tiffany was pacing back and forth in front of the fireplace, holding a sheaf of legal documents. She was not wearing pajamas. She was wearing a silk robe that looked like it cost more than my parents' car. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing the cold, hard lines of a woman who was done playing nice. "We need to sign this now," Harold Tiffany said, her voice sharp and impatient. "I am not walking down that aisle tomorrow unless I know my child is protected." My father sat on the sofa, his head in his hands. My mother Brenda was sitting next to him, wringing her hands so hard I thought her fingers might snap. "But Tiffany, honey," my mother pleaded, her voice trembling. "This is the deed to the lake cabin. It is the only asset we have left that is fully paid off. It was supposed to be our retirement income. We were going to rent it out." Tiffany stopped pacing. She turned to face them, her eyes narrowing into slits. "Retirement," she scoffed. "You do not need retirement income. You are going to be living in a mansion with us, remember? We are going to take care of you. But I cannot raise the heir to the Brooks dynasty in a world where his financial future is uncertain. What if something happens to you, Harold? What if you make another bad investment? I need to know that this baby has collateral." She placed a hand on her stomach, rubbing it theatrically. "Trey, tell them," she commanded. My brother Trey was sitting in the recliner eating a slice of cold pizza. He looked exhausted and bloated. He looked like a man who had sold his soul and was realizing the price was too high, but he was too cowardly to ask for a refund. "Just sign it, Mom." Trey mumbled, his mouth full. "Tiffany is stressing out. You know what the doctor said about stress. Do you want her to lose the baby?" My father looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. "Son, that cabin has been in the family for 40 years. My father built it with his own hands. And now you are using it to build your grandson's future?" Tiffany snapped. She threw the papers onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. "Look, I am done arguing. My mother was right. She told me not to marry into this family. She said you people were selfish. She said you would never prioritize me or my child." She turned toward the stairs. "I am leaving," she announced. My mother gasped. "What?" "It is the night before the wedding." "I do not care," Tiffany shouted, spinning around. "I am going to my mother's house in Buckhead. At least there I am appreciated. I will call the stadium in the morning and cancel the wedding. I will tell everyone that the Brooks family cares more about a rotted old wooden cabin than they do about their own flesh and blood." She took a step toward the door. "Wait!" my father cried out. He stood up so fast he knocked over his water glass. "Wait, Tiffany! Please, do not leave!" Tiffany stopped. She didn't turn around. She just stood there waiting. "We cannot cancel the wedding," my father stammered. "The senators are coming. The investors. We would be ruined. We would be the laughingstock of Atlanta." "Then sign the papers," Tiffany said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Show me you love us." I watched from my corner. My fingers hovered over my keyboard. On my screen, I was not looking at a seating chart. I was logged into the back end of the Nemesis Capital Secure server. The interface was dark mode black with green text. In the center of the screen was a profile labeled The Brooks Estate. The status bar showed the total debt load. It was staggering. They were leveraged at 95%. And now they were about to sign away the last 5%. I watched my father reach for the pen. His hand was shaking. He looked at my mother. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. They were terrified of losing the image they had built. They were terrified of the shame. They were willing to burn their own future to keep warm for one more day. I looked at the clock on my laptop. It was 11:58 p.m. On my screen, a dialog box was open. It read, "Notice of acceleration and immediate call on loan." This was the nuclear option. In the fine print of the contract they signed for the new house, there was a clause that allowed the lender to demand full repayment immediately if the borrower attempted to transfer, sell, or leverage any other assets without the lender's permission. By signing that deed over to Tiffany, they were triggering a technical default. They were breaking the contract I had trapped them in. I watched my father sign his name, Harold Brooks. I watched him pass the pen to my mother. She signed, Brenda Brooks. Tiffany snatched the papers up before the ink was even dry. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. "See," she purred, clutching the deed to her chest. "Was that so hard? Now we can be a real family." She walked over to Trey and kissed him on the forehead. "Good job, baby. Mommy is happy now." I looked back at my screen. I clicked the checkbox that said flag for immediate execution. I typed in the time for the notification to be sent. 10 a.m. Tomorrow morning, right when the ceremony was scheduled to begin. I moved my cursor to the button that said, Confirm. I pressed Enter. The screen flashed green for a second. Command accepted. The system was now locked. The emails were queued. The foreclosure notices were automatically generated and sent to the sheriff's department server. The bank accounts were flagged to be frozen at the start of business day. The bomb was armed, the timer was ticking, and they were all standing right on top of it, celebrating their victory. I closed my laptop with a soft click. The sound made Tiffany turn her head. "What are you doing over there, Maya?" she asked, suspicious. "You have been typing for an hour. Is the seating chart done?" I stood up. I smoothed down my oversized hoodie. I picked up my laptop and held it against my chest like a shield. "Yes," I said. My voice was calm, unwavering. "Is everything taken care of?" my mother asked, wiping her eyes. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had watched me eat alone for years. I looked at the father who stole my savings. I looked at the brother who treated me like dirt. "Yes, Mom," I said. "Everything is taken care of. The guests are sorted. The venue is ready. And the finances? Well, they are exactly where they need to be." Good, Tiffany yawned. "Now go to sleep. You have to be at the South Gate by 7 a.m. in your uniform. Do not be late. I want the ticket scanning to go smoothly." I walked toward the stairs. I stopped next to Tiffany. I could smell the greed radiating off her. "Don't worry, Tiffany," I said softly. "It is going to be a day no one will ever forget." I walked up the stairs to my childhood bedroom, the room that was now a sneaker closet. I laid down on the bare mattress. I did not close my eyes. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Downstairs, I heard them popping a bottle of champagne. They were toasting to the cabin. They were toasting to the baby. "Drink up," I whispered to the darkness, "because tomorrow the landlord comes to collect, and the rent is due in blood." The concrete bowels of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium were usually cold, but on Super Bowl Sunday, the air in the loading dock was hot with exhaust fumes and panic. It was 8 in the morning. The game kickoff was hours away, but the wedding ceremony was scheduled to start in 90 minutes. I was standing near the service elevator wearing a bright yellow event staff vest that was 2 sizes too big. My father had insisted I wear it. He said it would help me blend in with the help so the senators and investors would not realize the ticket taker was his daughter. I watched a massive white refrigerated truck with the logo Divine Catering painted on the side rumble its engine. The driver was shifting gears. He was not backing in to unload the lobster tails and Wagyu sliders my parents had bragged about for months. He was driving away. Tiffany was running alongside the truck in her high heels, screaming and waving her arms like a maniac. "Stop," she shrieked. "You cannot leave. We have a contract. My father-in-law is a very important man. Come back here." The truck did not stop. It turned the corner and vanished, taking $50,000 worth of gourmet food with it. Tiffany collapsed against a concrete pillar, hyperventilating. She was clutching a bright orange shopping bag to her chest. My parents and Trey were standing nearby, looking like they had just watched a murder. I walked over to them, keeping my face neutral. What happened? I asked, even though I already knew. My father Harold turned on me instantly. His face was purple with rage. They left, he shouted, spit flying from his mouth. The caterer just left. He said the deposit was never paid. He said the check bounced 3 days ago, and they have been trying to call us but no one answered. He spun around to face Tiffany. Tiffany, you said you handled the deposit. You said you wired the $20,000 last Tuesday. Tiffany looked up. Her eyes were wide and wet with fake tears. I did, Harold. I swear I did. It must be the bank. You know how they treat us. They probably froze the transfer because they are racist. They are trying to sabotage our big day. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing loudly. But as she moved, the bright orange bag she was clutching shifted. I saw the logo stamped in gold foil on the front. Hermes. I knew that bag. I knew exactly what was inside. It was a Birkin 25 in Togo leather. I knew because I owned 3 of them. And I knew that on the resale market, a brand new Birkin cost almost exactly $20,000. I looked at Tiffany. I looked at the bag. Then I looked at the empty loading dock where the food should have been. She had eaten the deposit. She had literally spent the wedding feast on a purse to impress people she hated. Trey, my genius brother, was pacing in circles, pulling at his collar. We are screwed, he moaned. The senator is coming at 10. We cannot serve him air, Dad. We promised a 5-course meal. If we don't feed them, they are going to leave. I will look like a joke. My mother Brenda grabbed my arm. Her fingernails dug into my skin through the cheap polyester vest. Maya, fix this, she hissed. Me? I asked, pulling my arm away. How am I supposed to fix a catering cancellation an hour before the wedding? You are the organizer, my mother screamed, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. You were supposed to check the accounts. You were supposed to remind Tiffany. This is your fault. You are jealous of her, so you let this happen. I stared at her. The delusion was breathtaking. So, what do you want me to do, Mom? I asked. Cook for 300 people in the locker room. Do not get smart with me, Harold barked. He looked around wildly, desperation clawing at his dignity. Pizza. We need food. Go get pizza. Pizza, I repeated. You want to serve Papa John's to a United States senator at a black tie wedding. It is better than nothing, Harold yelled. Go. Right now, take the van. Go to every pizza place within 5 miles and buy everything they have. 500 pizzas, wings, sodas. Just get food on the tables before the reception starts. He pointed a shaking finger at the exit. I stood my ground. I crossed my arms over my yellow vest. I cannot do that, Dad. The silence that followed was heavier than the stadium roof. What did you say? Trey asked, stepping forward. He puffed out his chest, trying to summon the intimidation he used to have when he was a linebacker. I said I cannot do that, I replied calmly. 500 pizzas will cost at least $10,000. I have $40 in my bank account because I spent my savings on Tiffany's dress. Unless you are giving me cash, I cannot buy anything. Trey's face twisted into a snarl. He looked at Tiffany, who was crying into her $20,000 stolen bag. He looked at his father, who was hyperventilating. He needed someone to hurt. He needed to punch something to feel like a man again. You lying little witch, Trey growled. You have money. You are just trying to ruin this for me. Give me your card. I don't have it, Trey. He lunged at me. It was a clumsy, heavy lunge. He grabbed the lapels of my yellow vest and shoved me hard against the concrete wall. My head hit the stone with a sharp crack. Give me the money, Maya, he screamed in my face. His breath smelled of stale alcohol and fear. I will beat it out of you if I have to. You think you are better than us? You are nothing. You are the help. Now fix this. He raised his fist. Hey, the voice boomed across the loading dock like thunder. Trey froze. We all looked toward the service entrance. Standing there was Big Mike. Mike was the head of security for the entire stadium. He was 6'7", 300 pounds of solid muscle, and he was flanked by 2 armed police officers. Mike and I went way back. I had helped him restructure his mortgage 2 years ago when his wife got sick. He knew exactly who I was. He knew I wasn't a ticket taker. He knew I owned half the debt in this building. Mike stepped forward, his hand resting on his baton. His eyes were locked on Trey. "Get your hands off her, son," Mike said, his voice low and dangerous, "or I will break them off." Trey let go of me instantly. He stumbled back, holding his hands up. We are just having a family dispute, officer," Trey stammered. "She is my sister. She is messing up the wedding." Mike ignored him. He looked at me. His eyes were asking a question. "Do you want me to take him down? Do you want me to end this right now?" I straightened my vest. I touched the back of my head. It was throbbing, but I wasn't bleeding. I looked at Trey. He was cowering. If Mike arrested him now, the wedding would be cancelled. The guests would go home. The humiliation would be private. No, I wanted public execution. I wanted the senator to see this. I wanted the world to see them fall. I looked at Mike and gave a nearly imperceptible shake of my head. I raised my hand, palm out. "It is okay, Mike," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My brother is just stressed. It is his big day. He didn't mean it." Mike hesitated. He didn't like it, but he trusted me. "You sure, ma'am?" Mike asked, emphasizing the ma'am to show respect that my family missed entirely. "I am sure," I said. "I will go get the pizzas." I turned back to my father. "Give me the credit card, Dad. I will go." Harold fumbled in his wallet and pulled out the corporate Amex for his failing business. He didn't know I had frozen that card at midnight, too. It would decline the moment I tried to buy the first pepperoni slice. "Just go," Harold panted. "And don't come back until the van is full." I took the card. I looked at Tiffany, who was wiping her eyes, careful not to smudge her makeup. "You are lucky you have a sister like me," I said. Tiffany sniffed. "Just hurry up. And use the service entrance when you get back. I don't want people seeing pizza boxes." I walked toward the exit. As I passed Mike, I paused for a fraction of a second. "Let them in," I whispered so only he could hear. "Let the show go on." Mike nodded. He stepped aside. I walked out into the bright morning sunlight. I climbed into the rusted catering van my father had rented. I started the engine. I drove out of the stadium lot. But I didn't turn left toward Papa John's. I turned right. I drove around the perimeter of the stadium to the North Tower entrance, the private entrance for executives and owners. I parked the van. I took off the yellow vest and threw it in the back seat. Underneath, I was wearing a tailored white silk suit. I pulled the pins out of my hair, letting it fall around my shoulders. I picked up my phone. I dialed David, my assistant. "Are the foreclosure papers ready?" I asked. "Yes, boss," David answered. "The process server is at the stadium gate." "Good," I said. "Tell him to wait for my signal." And David. "Yes, cancel the pizza. Let them starve." I walked into the executive elevator. I inserted my master keycard. I pressed the button for the control room. Trey wanted a feast. I was going to serve him something cold. The stadium was vast and intimidating, a cathedral of steel and glass built for gladiators. But today it was dressed up for a charade. The artificial turf at the 50-yard line had been covered with a white carpet that stretched for 100 feet. Thousands of empty red seats looked down on the small cluster of white folding chairs arranged in the center of the field. It felt like a stage play performed for an audience of ghosts. I stood high above it all, behind the tinted glass of the master control room. From here, the people down on the field looked like ants. I could see my parents, Harold and Brenda, sitting in the front row. My mother was wiping tears from her eyes, probably thinking about how she had successfully married off her golden child to a woman who hated her. My father was puffing out his chest, looking around at the handful of senators and investors he had managed to lure here, desperate to convince them that he was still a man of influence. Then the music began. It was not a recording. It was a live string quartet playing a dramatic rendition of a Beyoncé song. The double doors of the player tunnel opened, smoke machines hissed, pumping a cloud of white fog onto the field. And then she appeared. Tiffany emerged from the fog like a vengeful angel. She was wearing the $16,000 dress I had paid for. The crystals on the bodice caught the stadium floodlights, making her sparkle with a blinding intensity. She walked slowly, chin up, looking not at her groom, but at the cameras. She had hired a documentary crew to film this, convinced that this wedding would be her audition tape for a reality TV show. She looked beautiful. I could not deny that. She looked like every dream my brother ever had. I shifted my gaze to Trey. He was standing at the altar, which was decorated with two massive arches of white roses. He was wearing a custom tuxedo that strained against his midsection. As Tiffany approached, Trey broke down. He didn't just cry. He wept. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. To the guests, it looked like overwhelming love. To me, it looked like relief. He was crying because he thought he had made it. He thought he had secured the trophy wife, the mansion, and the lifestyle he believed was his birthright. He thought the scam had worked. The priest, a man my father had flown in from their old church, raised his hands. The music faded. The silence of the empty stadium pressed down on them. "We are gathered here today," the priest's voice boomed through the massive stadium speakers, echoing off the rafters, "to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." I leaned forward, resting my hands on the cool control console. The panel in front of me was lit up like a Christmas tree. There were buttons for the sound system, the pyrotechnics, the lights, and the crown jewel of the stadium, the Halo board. The Halo board was the largest video screen in the world, a 360-degree ring that circled the roof of the stadium. Right now it was displaying a static image of Trey and Tiffany's initials intertwined in gold script. It was tacky, but massive. The priest continued his sermon. He talked about loyalty. He talked about honesty. He talked about building a foundation on truth. I laughed softly. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Down on the field, Tiffany reached the altar. She took Trey's hands. She smiled at him, that same shark-like smile she had given me when she threw the vase. "Do you, Trey Brooks, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the priest asked. "To have and to hold, for richer or for poorer?" "I do," Trey sobbed. "For richer. Definitely for richer." "And do you, Tiffany, take this man?" the priest asked. "To love and to cherish in sickness and in health." Tiffany paused for a dramatic beat. She looked at the cameras. She looked at the diamond ring on her finger. "I do," she said, her voice clear and strong. The priest smiled. He looked out at the small crowd. "If there is anyone here present who has just cause why this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The stadium went silent. This was the part where everyone held their breath for a second, just out of tradition, before letting it out. My parents smiled at each other. They had done it. They had crossed the finish line. 1 second passed. 2 seconds passed. I reached out and flipped the master switch on the console. Screech! A high-pitched feedback noise tore through the air, amplified by the stadium's 100,000-watt sound system. It was loud enough to shake the fillings in their teeth. Down on the field, everyone covered their ears. Tiffany ducked. Trey looked around wildly. Then the lights went out. Not all the lights, just the floodlights illuminating the altar. The field was plunged into a sudden dramatic twilight. The guests gasped. I heard my father shouting, "What is happening? Is it a power outage?" Then the Halo board changed. The gold initials vanished. The screen went completely black. The stadium was swallowed by darkness. And then a single spotlight snapped on. It did not hit the bride. It did not hit the groom. It hit the technical control booth high up in the executive level. It hit me. I stepped forward into the light. I was no longer wearing the oversized, stained yellow vest. I was no longer wearing the messy bun and the scuffed sneakers. I was wearing a white Tom Ford power suit tailored to within an inch of its life. The fabric gleamed under the spotlight. My hair was down, cascading over my shoulders in perfect waves. I was wearing diamond earrings that caught the light and threw it back with a vengeance. I looked like a CEO. I looked like a judge. I looked like the executioner. I held a wireless microphone in my hand. I tapped it once. Thump, thump. The sound echoed like the footsteps of a giant. I have an objection, I said. My voice filled the entire stadium. It was godlike. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Down on the field, 300 heads snapped up. They squinted against the spotlight. "Who is that?" Tiffany screamed. "Cut the mic!" But she couldn't cut the mic. I own the mic. I leaned against the glass of the booth, looking down at them. "I object," I repeated, my voice calm and icy. "Not to the marriage. You two deserve each other. I object to the fraud." My father stood up, shading his eyes. "Maya, is that you? Get down from there. You are supposed to be at the gate. You are embarrassing us." I laughed. It was a dark, rich sound that rippled through the air. "Oh, Dad, we are way past embarrassment. We are in the territory of criminal negligence." Trey grabbed the priest's microphone. "Security!" he yelled. "Get her out of there. She is crazy. She is ruining my wedding." I pressed a button on the console. Trey's microphone cut dead. He tapped it frantically, but no sound came out. "I silenced you, Trey," I said. "Just like you silenced me for 5 years. But today I have the talking stick." I walked closer to the window. "You asked for objections," I said to the priest. "Well, usually objections are about a previous marriage or a hidden crime. In this case, it is about math. You see, this wedding costs $200,000. The house they just signed for costs $2 million. And the people standing at that altar? They have a combined bank balance of negative $400. A murmur went through the crowd. The investors looked at each other. The senator frowned. Tiffany grabbed Trey's arm. "Do something," she hissed loud enough for the front row to hear. "I am trying," Trey yelled. He looked up at me. "Maya, I swear to God I will come up there and kill you." "No, you won't," I said. "You cannot even walk up the stairs without getting winded, Trey. And besides, you might want to watch the screen." I prepared a little montage for the happy couple. I hit the enter key on my laptop. "Look up," I commanded. The massive halo board, the 360-degree ring of darkness, suddenly exploded into life. But it was not playing a romantic slideshow. It was not playing childhood photos. It was playing a video in high-definition 4K resolution. It was the video from the balcony. Tiffany's face, 50 feet high, looked down at the tiny people on the field. Her voice, crisp and clear, boomed through the speakers. "Trey is disgusting. He is getting so fat and he is so needy. Every time he touches me, I want to throw up. He thinks he is some kind of king, but he is just a broke, washed-up athlete with a family of morons." The silence on the field was absolute. It was the silence of a heart stopping. Trey stared up at the screen. His mouth fell open. Tiffany froze. She looked up at her own face, distorted by the massive scale mocking her. The video continued. "I will squeeze a baby out of him to lock down the child support. I am taking half the house." Who are they going to believe? The poor white girl or the angry black family? The guests gasped in unison. My mother let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. I watched from my tower. I watched the color drain from Tiffany's face until she matched her dress. I watched Trey's knees buckle. I brought the microphone to my lips one last time. "Happy wedding day," I whispered. And then I hit the next button. The foreclosure documents. The show had just begun. "Welcome to the Super Bowl of Truth," I said. My voice boomed through the stadium speakers, rattling the empty seats in the upper decks. It was a sound that commanded attention, stripping away the pretense of the wedding and laying the nerves of the audience bare. I stood in the control booth, looking down like a puppeteer who had finally decided to cut the strings. I pressed the spacebar on my laptop. The massive halo board, the technological marvel that circled the entire roof of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, flickered to life. It was no longer dark. It was blindingly bright. The image that appeared was crystal clear. It was shot in 4K resolution, capturing every pore, every bead of sweat, and every smear of makeup. It was Tiffany. But not the Tiffany standing on the altar in the white dress. This was the Tiffany from the night of the bachelorette party. She was holding a tequila bottle, her eyes glazed, leaning against a balcony railing with the Atlanta skyline behind her. The audio kicked in. It was crisp. I had filtered out the background club music, leaving only her voice magnified to a deafening volume. "Hey baby God, I miss you," the giant Tiffany on the screen cooed. Down on the field, the real Tiffany froze. Her hand went to her throat. She looked up, her eyes wide with horror, seeing her own face distorted and magnified 50 feet high. "Who is that?" Trey whispered, his voice picked up by the lapel mic I had reactivated just for this moment. "Who are you talking to?" The video continued. "I am at the stupid bachelorette party." The screen Tiffany groaned. "It is unbearable. I am surrounded by these idiots. And Trey's sister is here. She is such a loser. She is literally standing guard outside like a dog." A ripple of shock went through the guests. I saw my mother Brenda cover her mouth. She had spent 5 years calling me a loser, but hearing it from the golden girl she worshipped hit differently. But the video was just warming up. "Just endure it a little longer, babe," a male voice on the video said. "Stick to the plan." I know, Tiffany on the screen said, taking a swig of tequila. "I am trying. But God, Chad, it is so hard. Trey is disgusting." The word disgusting echoed around the stadium. Disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. Trey flinched physically as if he had been slapped. He looked at Tiffany. She was shaking her head frantically, mouthing, "No, no, it is a deep fake, it is AI." But the video kept playing, relentless and cruel. "He is getting so fat and he is so needy," the video continued. "Every time he touches me, I want to throw up. He thinks he is some kind of king, but he is just a broke, washed-up athlete with a family of morons." The investors in the front row, the men my father had begged to attend, shifted in their seats. They were uncomfortable. They were witnessing a public castration. But then came the kill shot. The moment that turned the room from awkward to hostile. The Tiffany on screen laughed. "I will squeeze a baby out of him to lock down the child support. I am taking half the house." Who are they going to believe? The poor white girl or the angry black family? Look at them, Chad. They're like a bunch of khakis wearing gorillas trying to play house. The air was sucked out of the stadium. The racial slur hung there heavy and toxic. Gorillas. My father. Harold stood up slowly. His face was gray. He had spent his whole life trying to be one of the good ones, trying to assimilate, trying to prove he had class. And here was the woman he had mortgaged his life for, calling him an animal to her secret lover. The senator, a black man who had marched in the civil rights movement, stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He did not say a word. He simply turned his back on the altar and began to walk up the long aisle toward the exit. One by one, the other investors followed him. The silence was broken by the sound of expensive leather shoes walking away on the concrete. Tiffany was trembling. She looked at the guests leaving. She looked at the screen. "Turn it off!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Maya, I know it is you. Turn it off!" I leaned into my microphone. "Why should I turn it off, Tiffany?" I asked calmly. "I thought you wanted to be a reality star. This is your debut. Smile for the camera." Trey was staring at the ground. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The arrogance was gone. The bravado was gone. He was just a boy in a tuxedo that didn't fit, realizing that his entire life was a lie. He looked at Tiffany. "You called me a gorilla," he whispered. Tiffany reached for him. "Baby, listen to me. It is edited. Maya did this. She hates us. She is trying to divide us." "Don't touch me," Trey roared. He pulled away from her so hard she stumbled in her heels and fell onto the white carpet. The video on the screen ended, looping back to the beginning. "Trey is disgusting. Trey is disgusting." Suddenly there was a commotion in the front row. A woman in a pink dress leaped over the barrier. It was Tiffany's mother, a woman named Carol, who had spent the morning complaining about the humidity. She was charging toward the technical booth access tunnel, screaming like a banshee. "You illegal wiretapper!" she shrieked, pointing up at my window. "You cannot do this! I will sue you! I will have you arrested! Turn that screen off right now!" She ran onto the field, trying to find a way to cut the power. She grabbed a cable running along the sideline and yanked it. Nothing happened. "Security," I said into the mic. "Please remove the trash from the field. The game is not over yet." From the shadows of the player tunnel, Big Mike and his team emerged. They did not run. They walked with the slow, terrifying purpose of men who enjoyed their jobs. Mike intercepted Carol just as she reached the power box. He didn't even use force. He just stepped in her way, a wall of muscle. "Ma'am, you need to return to your seat," Mike said. She slapped his chest. "Get out of my way, you brute. Do you know who I am?" Mike looked up at me in the booth. I gave him a nod. Mike grabbed Carol by the arm. He didn't hurt her, but she wasn't going anywhere. "Let me go," she screamed. "Tiffany, run! Get the lawyer!" But Tiffany couldn't run. She was sitting on the ground, surrounded by the wreckage of her scheme. Her dress was stained with grass. Her face was streaked with mascara. Trey fell to his knees. He didn't look at her. He put his head on the turf and let out a sound that I will never forget. It was a guttural, raw howl of pain. It was the sound of a golden child realizing he was just fool's gold. My parents sat frozen in the front row. They didn't move to help Trey. They didn't move to help Tiffany. They were paralyzed by the shame. They knew the senator had left. They knew their reputation was destroyed. They knew that everyone in Atlanta would be talking about the Brooks family gorillas by dinner time. I watched it all. I felt a cold, sharp satisfaction in my chest. I picked up the remote control for the presentation. "Did you enjoy the movie?" I asked the stadium. "I hope so, because that was just the trailer. Now let us get to the main feature." I clicked the button. The image of Tiffany's face vanished from the Halo board. It was replaced by a document, a PDF with a red stamp across the front. The text was large enough for everyone to read. "Notice of foreclosure." I saw my father's head snap up. He squinted at the screen. He recognized the document. "Maya, no?" He whispered, his voice too quiet to reach me, but I read his lips perfectly. "Yes, Dad," I whispered back, though he couldn't hear me. I spoke into the microphone again. "You see, folks, this wedding was paid for with stolen money. The house they bought was bought with lies. And the family sitting in the front row, they don't own any of it." I paused, letting the words settle. "I do." I looked down at them, shivering in the spotlight. Time to pay the rent. The stadium was already reeling from the emotional shrapnel of the video, but I was not done. I did not just want to break their hearts. I wanted to break their bank accounts. I wanted to strip them down until they were naked before the world with nothing left to hide behind. I pressed the final key on my console. The Halo board above us shifted instantly. The image of Tiffany's face was replaced by a wall of solid, angry crimson. The text was 300 feet tall, scrolling around the ring of the stadium like a news ticker from hell. "Notice of foreclosure. Notice of acceleration. Asset seizure in progress." The red light bathed the field in a blood-colored glow. It looked like a crime scene. From the player tunnel, a new procession emerged. It was not a bridal party. It was a funeral procession for their lifestyle. Leading the pack was Mr. Sterling, my chief legal counsel. He was a man who smiled rarely and billed hourly. He was wearing a navy pinstripe suit and carrying a thick leather briefcase. Flanking him were 4 uniformed officers from the Atlanta Police Department, their hands resting near their belts. They walked onto the field with the rhythmic thud of authority, their boots crunching on the white carpet that was supposed to lead to a happy ending. The few guests who had remained in the stands, mostly distant relatives and people too shocked to move, watched in silence. Mr. Sterling walked right up to the shell-shocked groom. He didn't offer congratulations. He offered a document. He thrust a stack of papers into Trey's chest. Trey grabbed them instinctively, staring at the legal jargon blankly. Mr. Sterling took a microphone from a stand near the altar. His voice was calm, bureaucratic, the voice of the law. Mr. Harold Brooks, Mr. Trey Brooks, Mrs. Tiffany Brooks, I represent Nemesis Capital. Due to a material breach of contract, specifically the unauthorized transfer of collateral and the misappropriation of funds for this wedding, your loans have been accelerated effective immediately. My father found his voice. He stepped forward, his face pale and sweaty in the red light. Breach, he stammered. What breach? We just signed the papers for the house yesterday. We have not even moved in yet. You cannot do this. Sterling adjusted his glasses. He looked bored. Precisely, Mr. Brooks. And by attempting to transfer the deed of your lake cabin to Mrs. Tiffany Brooks last night, you triggered the cross-default clause in your primary mortgage agreement. As of this moment, Nemesis Capital has exercised its right to seize all secured assets. He pointed a finger toward the city beyond the stadium walls. The Buckhead estate is locked. The locks on your residence in the suburbs are being changed as we speak. Your furniture, your electronics, and your personal effects are being cataloged for auction to recoup the debt. Trey dropped the papers. But what about my car? He whined. My Range Rover. It is in the VIP lot. Sterling checked his clipboard. The white Range Rover with the custom plates. Yes, that vehicle was purchased with a loan secured by the home equity you no longer have. It is currently being towed. I believe the tow truck driver is taking it to the impound lot as we speak. Tiffany let out a shriek. It was a primal sound of greed being ripped away. You cannot do that, she screamed, scrambling to her feet. That is my car. I am pregnant. You are stressing the baby. One of the police officers stepped forward. He was a large man with a face carved from granite. He pulled a pair of metal handcuffs from his belt. Mrs. Tiffany Brooks, he asked. Tiffany stopped screaming. She looked at the officer. She looked at the handcuffs. Yes, she whispered. Turn around and place your hands behind your back, the officer said. Tiffany's eyes went wide. For what? I didn't do anything. You are under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, and credit card fraud, the officer recited. We have evidence that you opened multiple credit lines in the names of Mr. and Mrs. Harold Brooks without their consent. We also have evidence of you forging bank documents to secure a catering contract that was never paid. The officer grabbed her wrists. Tiffany fought him. She thrashed like a wild animal, her $16,000 dress tearing at the seams. Get off me, she yelled. Trey, help me. Harold, do something. But Trey did not move. He stood there watching his bride get cuffed. He watched as the officer tightened the metal around her wrists, the click, click, click echoing in the silence. Trey looked around the stadium. He looked at the red screens. He looked at the lawyer. He looked at the empty seats where the senator used to be. Who is doing this? Trey roared. He looked up at the sky spinning in circles. Who is Nemesis Capital? Why are you doing this to us? We are good people. Who are you working for? I leaned into my microphone one last time. They work for me, Trey, I said. My voice filled the stadium, drowning out Tiffany's sobbing. Trey stopped spinning. He looked up at the control booth. He squinted against the spotlight. I walked out of the booth onto the viewing platform. I stepped right to the edge of the glass railing. The spotlight hit me, illuminating my white suit, making me look like a ghost haunting the rafters. Nemesis is the goddess of revenge, Trey, I said. And Nemesis Capital is the company I built while you were sleeping on Dad's couch. I paused. I am the lender, Trey. I am the landlord. I am the bank. My father fell to his knees. He looked up at me with a look of absolute horror. He realized in that moment that the daughter he had dismissed, the girl he had sent to fetch pizza, was the one holding the leash around his neck. Maya, he whispered, you own the debt, Every cent, Dad, I said. I bought your mortgage 6 months ago. I bought your car loans 3 months ago. And yesterday I personally approved the loan for that mansion you wanted so badly. Trey shook his head. No. No, that is impossible. You are a loser. You do data entry. You drive a Toyota. I laughed. It was a cold, hard laugh. I was entering data all right, Trey. I was entering the data of your destruction. And unlike you, I never miss a payment. I looked at the police officer holding Tiffany. Take her away, officer, I said. She hates this family anyway. I am doing her a favor. The officer began to drag Tiffany toward the tunnel. She was screaming my name, cursing me, calling me every name in the book. You are a monster, Maya, she screamed. You are a jealous, ugly monster. I watched her disappear into the darkness. Then I looked down at my brother and my parents. They were alone on the massive white field bathed in the red light of foreclosure. They had no home to go back to. They had no car to drive. They had no money to buy a hotel room. I watched her disappear into the darkness. Then I looked down at my brother and my parents. They were alone on the massive white field bathed in the red light of foreclosure. They had no home to go back to. They had no car to drive. They had no money to buy a hotel room. I smiled at their confusion. Get out of my stadium, I said. I turned my back on them and walked back into the booth. The heavy steel doors of the service exit slammed shut with a final echoing boom. I turned my back on them and walked back into the booth. The heavy steel doors of the service exit slammed shut with a final echoing boom, locking my family out of the stadium and out of the life they thought they were entitled to. The roar of the Super Bowl kickoff crowd was muffled now, a distant thunder that belonged to a world they were no longer part of. My parents and my brother stood in the middle of the vast concrete expanse of the VIP parking lot. The sun was high and bright, casting harsh shadows that exposed every flaw in their ruined finery. My father Harold looked shrunken in his tuxedo. His shoulders were slumped, and his face was the color of old ash. My mother Brenda was shivering, clutching her arms, her expensive shawl gone left behind in the chaos of the suite. And Trey, my brother, looked like a child who had dropped his ice cream cone in the dirt. He was staring at the empty spot where his Range Rover used to be, blinking slowly as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. They were alone. They had no car keys. They had no wallets. Their phones were locked inside the suite because security had not allowed them to retrieve their personal items during the eviction. They were completely, utterly destitute. I walked toward them. The click of my heels on the pavement was sharp and rhythmic. I was flanked by two of my personal security guards, large men in black suits who looked ready to intercept any foolishness. My father looked up as I approached. For a second, a flicker of hope lit up his desperate eyes. He took a step toward me, his hands reaching out. Maya. He choked out, his voice cracking. Oh, thank God. Maya, baby, please tell them this is a mistake. Tell them who we are. We cannot be out here. The investors. The people will see us. He looked around wildly, terrified that a camera might be pointed at him. I stopped 10 feet away. I didn't offer a hand. I didn't offer a hug. I just stood there, the white sunlight gleaming off my suit, looking at him like he was a stranger. There is no mistake, Harold, I said coldly. You are exactly where you belong. Outside. My mother rushed forward, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. Maya, please, she sobbed. We are your parents. We raised you. You cannot leave us here with nothing. We have no way to get home. The house, the lawyer said the locks are changed. Where are we supposed to sleep tonight? I reached into my blazer pocket. I pulled out 3 white envelopes. They saw the paper and their eyes widened. Greed is a reflex for them. They thought it was checks. They thought it was cash. They thought even after everything that I was still the safety net. I do not want you to sleep on the street, I said, my voice deceptively soft. I am not a monster. I have arranged transportation and lodging for you. Thank you, Trey breathed, wiping his nose with his sleeve. I knew it. I knew you were bluffing. How much is it? Is it enough to get the car back? I tossed the envelopes onto the ground at their feet. They landed on the oil-stained concrete. Pick them up, I commanded. My father hesitated, his pride warring with his desperation, but desperation won. He bent down his knees, popping, and snatched up the envelopes. He tore his open with trembling fingers. He pulled out the contents. It was not a check. It was a Greyhound bus ticket. Detroit, he whispered, staring at the ticket. One way. I nodded. Detroit. I own a block of dilapidated apartments there that I am planning to renovate next year. One of the units is vacant. It has running water and a mattress. I have paid the rent for 30 days. Detroit, my mother screamed. We don't know anyone in Detroit. It is freezing there. Maya, you cannot send us away like refugees. You have a choice, Brenda, I said, shrugging. You can take the bus. It leaves from the downtown depot in 45 minutes. Or you can stay here in Atlanta. But remember, you have no home here, you have no credit here. And everyone in this city just saw your daughter-in-law get arrested for fraud. You are pariahs. Trey looked at the ticket in his hand. He looked at me with pure hatred. I am not going, he spat. I am an athlete. I am a star. I am not getting on a bus. Then walk, I said. But start walking now because it is a long way to rock bottom and you are only halfway there. I turned around. Behind me, the blades of a sleek black helicopter began to spin. It was parked on the executive helipad just 50 yards away, the wind from its rotors whipping my hair around my face. Maya, wait, my father yelled, running after me. He was stopped by my security guard's hand against his chest. Maya, look at me. I am your father. I love you. Doesn't that mean anything? I stopped. I turned my head slightly, looking at him over my shoulder. 5 years ago, I stood in a parking lot in the rain, crying because my father chose a football game over me, I said. You told me to find my own way home. You told me not to be selfish. I stepped onto the helicopter's landing skid. So I am taking your advice, Dad. I found my own way, and I am done sharing it with you. I climbed into the cabin and closed the door. The sound of the world was instantly replaced by the hum of the engine and the luxury of silence. I nodded to the pilot. Take us up, David. The helicopter lifted off the ground. The sensation of rising was intoxicating. I looked out the window as the ground fell away. I saw the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, a massive silver oval shining in the sun. I saw the fireworks beginning to explode over the dome, marking the start of the Super Bowl halftime show. Red and gold sparks rained down from the sky, and down there, tiny as insects standing in the middle of the empty gray parking lot, were 3 figures. They were not looking up at me. They were fighting. I saw Trey shove my father. I saw my mother throw her ticket at Trey. They were tearing each other apart, trapped in the wreckage of their own making. I leaned back in the leather seat and took a sip of water. I watched the fireworks reflect in the glass of the window. They missed my graduation for a game, I whispered to the empty air, so I gave them a game they will never forget. The helicopter banked left, turning north toward New York, toward my empire, toward my peace. Game over. This story is a brutal reminder that shared DNA is not a suicide pact. Maya's journey teaches us that when toxic family members view your existence solely as a resource to be exploited, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to cut the cord. Financial independence is the ultimate shield against manipulation, and self-respect is the sword that severs the ties that bind you to abuse. You cannot save people who are addicted to their own destruction, and you should never set yourself on fire just to keep them warm. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming untouchable. If you have ever had to walk away from family to save your own soul, hit the like button and subscribe. Share this story with someone who needs to know that it is okay to choose yourself. Your peace is worth more than their approval. Welcome to the winning team.